Hey everyone, welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to be showing you my eyeshadow palette collection. I'm going to do a little bit of an inventory, kind of show you what I have and maybe declutter a few of them. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. Let's get right into the video. So if you haven't been on my channel before, my name is Marley and I love making YouTube videos about makeup and beauty. I love doing looks, reviews, will I buy it videos, declutter videos, all different kinds of things. So if that sounds good to you, then don't forget to subscribe. I usually upload about 2 to 3 videos a week and I would love to see you again on my channel. So recently I haven't been feeling as inspired to do my eyeshadow. I feel like I'm more focused on other parts of makeup. And there was a time where I was so inspired to do different eyeshadow looks every day. But I feel like that's becoming a bit less of a thing right now. I just feel a little bit overwhelmed. So I thought it would be a good idea to kind of go through my eyeshadow palettes. And then probably I'm gonna get some ideas just from doing that. So I don't have the biggest collection, but I still have a lot of options here. I have quite a lot of palettes to get through. So let's get started. So first up I have the Colourpop Going Coconuts eyeshadow palette. This is just a really nice neutral color story. I use this one quite a lot. I really like this one and I definitely want to keep it. This is a favorite. Then I have the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry eyeshadow palette. I love cool tones, but this just didn't do anything for me. This just wasn't my favorite. I just didn't fall in love with this one. I just feel like the shimmers in here are a bit too crumbly and not impactful enough to make up for that fact that they're not that easy to work with. And I just feel like this one doesn't really have the transition shades that I would want. So I'm not in love with this eyeshadow palette, even though I feel like I should be. This is a bit of a weird one, but I still want to keep it because I still feel like it's kind of relevant. And I do like to have this gray shade over here in my collection. I feel like I don't have a lot of gray options, so I'm gonna be keeping it, but I don't love it. There are other neutral cool toned eyeshadow palettes that I would recommend. I actually made a video about that. I will link it down below. This is the Natasha Denona Mini Glam. This one is actually in my project pan right now. I'm trying to pan this one. I just put it in, so you're not gonna see a lot of progress just yet. I quite like this eyeshadow palette, but I do like the mattes better than I like the shimmers. I feel like the shimmers by Natasha Denona aren't that special. I do really like this one, but is it my absolute favorite? Is it the best? I think I especially like this one because it's a small one. I only paid 25 euros for it. I'm just a little bit on the fence about Natasha Denona and her formula right now. I do like it, but do I love it? What do I like about it? I do want to keep it for sure. Of course, it's in my project pan. So I had to take a little break. I don't know exactly what I was talking about, but I would recommend this palette, but just don't expect the shimmers to be really special. I don't think the shimmers are really anything worth spending a lot of money on. So next up here I have the Colourpop Miss Bliss eyeshadow palette. This is a bit of a peachy pink pastel eyeshadow palette. I didn't love this collection. I didn't love this range. I do like this shimmer and this shimmer, but in general it wasn't my favorite. But I'm gonna be keeping this around because I do feel like I can kind of combine this with other eyeshadow palettes. I didn't hate this one as much as the other one that I have from this collection. It's just that these mattes are a little bit light and powdery. You can't get that much of dimension with this. Of course it's also pastel, but I just didn't really love this quality. Then the Artist Couture Ethereal Bloom palette. I got this quite recently. They brought this out in like the spring. We have a little bit of a mint to peach gradient packaging. I think the color story is pretty cute. I thought it looked pretty like nice and springy. It has some kind of bright pastel tones. I didn't love the shimmers in here. They are pretty dry. I liked the mattes more. I'm still gonna be keeping it around though. It's pretty new. I do like most of the shades in the palette, but I wasn't like super impressed. It isn't like my favorite. Usually I don't really get rid of newer palettes in my collection. That only happens when it's really bad and like unusable. So this is the Saharan 2 by Juvia's Place. This isn't my favorite palette because these mattes just don't really work for me. I do like the shimmers, but what kind of happens with Juvia's Place? for me is that shadows always turn out to be a little bit warmer than I expect them to, and I don't really love warm eye looks. So I think the quality of these shimmers in this palette is amazing, is really great. But this is like, this palette, this color story, I just don't really know how to use this. I do still want to keep it around. I do want to incorporate it into looks, but it's just, for example, this one, it looks like a pretty neutral bronze, but then when I use it on the eyes, it turns out pretty orange. This is just a little bit of a weird color story for me, and I feel like that happens a lot with Juvia's Place. The color stories are just a little bit weird, but because I love the quality and there are 6 really nice shimmers in here that I feel like I can use in different ways. I really like this blue, for example. I'm still going to be keeping it around, but it's just a hard one for me to grab for. It's a hard one for me to use. Then next up, the Nabla Side by Side Nude Eyeshadow Palette. This is one of my favorite nude eyeshadow palettes in my collection. I prefer this one a lot more than the sultry one. This has such a nice transition shades. You have a lot of options here. You have some different formulas here. I really like the shimmers, really like the mattes. I really like that you have kind of like this smoky row down here. This is just such a great palette, such a favorite. I would definitely recommend this one if you're looking for a neutral eyeshadow palette. Then this one is the Schooled Eyeshadow Palette by Onen's Eye. I recently tried Onen's Eye and I quite recently got this eyeshadow palette. This is from their newest collection. We have some really beautiful shimmers in here. I think the quality is amazing. The packaging is really beautiful. It feels very nice and sturdy. I think this is a really pretty companion palette and I definitely want to keep this around. I'm really impressed by this brand, and after trying this and the other eyeshadow palette that I got from them, I definitely want to try more. Then next up I got the Strawberry Shake palette by Colourpop. This is one of my absolute favorite eyeshadow palettes in my collection. This just has the colors that I like. It has peaches, it has pinks, it can go a little bit more soft and neutral, but also a little bit more bright. So many options here. I love wearing this in the spring and summer. I ranked this first in my Colourpop ranking video and it's just so good. Next up, I really recently got the Nubian Royal eyeshadow palette by Juvia's Place. This shade actually came completely shattered, but it was still kind of like in the pan. So I could press it back, but I don't love that. I didn't really like lose a lot of eyeshadow. It was still kind of like around the pan, in the pan. So yeah, I could kind of press it back, but that's not my favorite. But this is just a really soft eyeshadow. I still have to try this. I just got this like 2-3 days ago. I got this with my order with the blushed and bronzed collections. These purple mattes look really pretty. I don't know if I would really use this pressed glitter a lot, but I think in general I like having some extra purple options, because sometimes I just feel like I love purple, but I don't have a lot of really purple palettes. So I can't wait to try this one and see how I like the quality. At least I'm pretty excited that I've added a purple palette, like an extra purple palette, to my collection. Then one of my absolute favorite eyeshadow palettes in my collection. This isn't available anymore. This is the Kaleidos and Angelica Nyqvist collaboration, the Club Nebula eyeshadow palette. I got this right away when this first launched and I did a few videos with this one. This is such a gorgeous eyeshadow palette. I love the packaging, I love the front. I think the color story is just one of the best, or maybe it is the best that I have in my collection. I mean, just look at this selection of shades, the deepening up shades. You have so many options, but it all makes sense. I think this is so pretty. Beautiful. Then I have the Blushed Rose eyeshadow palette by Juvia's Place. This is one of their newest 6-pan eyeshadow palettes. I just did a video trying this one, but I definitely have to try it a bit more. I can't say that much about it just yet, but this shimmer is gorgeous. It looks wet on the eye. It's so nice and shimmery, so dimensional. I think this shimmer already makes this palette so worth it. I can't wait to do more looks with this one. I'm so excited about this one. I also think this packaging is just really cute. How good does this look? I love the color and the gradient that they chose for this one. Then we have the Juvia's Place, the Bronzed Rustic eyeshadow palette. This one, I thought that this was gonna be quite neutral, especially looking at this bottom row. I thought that looks really neutral. That looks like I could definitely use those shades. I used these shades in the video and actually it's quite warm. It's It turns out warmer on my eyes than I actually expected. So I'm not entirely sure about this palette. I'm not entirely sure how much I'm gonna use it, but at least the quality so far as I've tried it now, I think is really great. I just think the Juvia's Place eyeshadow formula is amazing. I definitely want to do more looks with this one and just really see how I feel about it. It just looks a bit orangey on my eyes. I don't know, it just doesn't look like that in the pan, right? This shimmer also looked pretty orangey, but in the pan it looks kind of like bronzy, rose gold maybe, quite neutral, but at least it's a pretty palette with a very nice quality. Then next up we have the Juvia's Place Valhalla 2 palette. This is such a beautiful palette. It's not as big as you might expect seeing it in pictures or seeing it online. It's still quite a compact palette. It's not that big, it's quite slim. I think this color story is really pretty. I think these 3 rows are just what really excites me. I mean, these turquoisey shades are beautiful, and these bluey kind of periwinkle shades are also just gorgeous. I've done so many looks with this palette already. I think the shimmers are just great. I love working with the mattes. This palette just really inspires me. It's a really interesting color story, I feel like, and I feel like I should use it more. You also have some kind of neutral options over here. Maybe I should play with that a little bit more in the future, because I've done a lot of like blue and green looks, but this side over here also looks pretty nice. And there's also like a multi-chrome in here, which I thought was really interesting. It's not really my style because it's a bit too dark for me to use as a shimmer, but this is such a nice palette. Next up we have the Fame eyeshadow palette by Colourpop. This is a really nice kind of neutral to cool eyeshadow palette. It's not available anymore, but I think this is just such a nice basic neutral palette for me. I can just do a really simple look with this one. I just really like the tones that this has. I like the quality of the shimmers. I like the quality of the mattes. When this came out, people thought it was pretty boring, and I also thought it was pretty boring, but then when I actually tried it, I loved it. I think this is such a nice palette, and of course they have other options now when it comes to neutrals and cool tones, but I'm still holding on to this one because this one is just good. It's just a staple in my collection and I like having this one. Then the BH Cosmetics Hanging in Hawaii eyeshadow palette. This turned out to be a little bit more warm than I expected. Not all of these colors I really love on myself, but I do really like the quality in this. I think if I would change something about this palette, it would be the shimmers. I feel like there is not a lot of variation here in the shimmers, and I think if they would just have put in a peachy shimmer and a pink shimmer and just like add a little bit of variation to the palette, I would probably like it more. Now I don't reach for it a lot. I feel like when I reach for it, I kind of do like similar looks, but I still like it enough to keep it. Then the Glamlight Ice Cream Dream eyeshadow palette. This is one of the favorites in my collection. I love doing pastel looks with this, but I also love doing more neutral looks. I mean, this peanut butter and pecan praline, is that how you say it, shade, I think this is just really pretty. You have some kind of like rosy brown tones that work really well. This salted caramel shade is just gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's so nice. This has just become one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes in my collection, and I definitely want to try more. This is just so good. Then I guess one of the most disappointing eyeshadow palettes in my collection. This is from the Kiko Fruit Explosion line, their new limited edition. This is in the shade Rose Alchemy. This got hard pan right away, like the shimmers got hard pan right away, and they were very lackluster, very dry. Like, you might as well not go through the trouble and try to get this on your eye. This quality of the shimmers is just really bad. The quality of the mattes I can kind of live with, but every time I try to do a look with these mattes, I just don't love it. So I'm gonna be keeping it because I still have to review it, but after that I think I'm just gonna throw it away, even though the packaging is so cute, but this quality, I just can't do anything with this. It's just too bad. It's just terrible. I can't with this one. It's in my mind, it's already decluttered, but I just have to keep it around for a little bit longer. Then we have the ABH Norvina eyeshadow palette. I quite like this. I definitely had to get used to it, but when you use these shimmers with the glitter glue, they look amazing. I just feel like with Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palettes, I always have to work with it a little bit. I just have to put in a little bit more effort. I don't feel like they're the easiest to work with, but they do give me a certain effect on the eyes that I don't really get with other eyeshadow palettes, especially this one. I like it, but it's a bit of extra work, so I don't reach for it that much. But I don't know, this color story is really nice. Once I have the eye look on my eye, I also really like how it looks. There are just other palettes that I grabbed for before this one because they're just so easy to work with. And also I just feel like there's basically 1 or 2 looks that I like to do with this one, and when I grab that one I do those looks, so it doesn't inspire me a lot. But I like this one a lot more than the sultry, especially the shimmers in here are really nice. I don't think I'm not really planning on buying any more Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palettes, but I'm definitely planning to keep the ones that I have for now. I usually reach for the Norvina eyeshadow palette in like the fall and winter. I feel like these shades and the looks that I do with this it makes me think of fall and winter. Even though there are some purple shades in here, some pinky shades, that's just when I think about this one. Alright, next up we have the new nude eyeshadow palette by Huda Beauty. I quite like these tones. It's a rosy nude eyeshadow palette. I have realized that I don't grab for mauves as much as I thought I would. I thought, oh, I like mauves, I'm so into mauves, but in the end I don't do a mauve eye look that much. I do quite like the quality in here. I think the mattes are easy enough to work with, maybe not my favorite, but they are quite nice. The shimmers you kind of have to be careful with because they are really crumbly and you will get a lot of fallout. So usually when I use this palette, when I do looks with this palette, I like it, but I kind of forget to reach for it because it's just a little bit of a hassle to use it sometimes. It's a little bit the same as that Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina palette. I like it, it's pretty, I like the end result, but it's not the easiest to work with. But I'm definitely going to be keeping this one. I think this is like the most expensive eyeshadow palette in my collection, so I'm not going to be throwing this away. And this particular shade, this matte lilac shade, I've used this quite a lot since I got this one. Next up we have the Natasha Denona Mini Love palette. I wasn't really impressed with this one. I think the mattes are fine, but especially the color of this one doesn't translate onto the eyes in the way that I want. It's a lot more warm on the eyes, and that's not really what I expect when I use it. When I start applying it, I'm like, oh, okay, it's more warm, so I don't love that. I bought it because I thought it was gonna be this shade and then it looks different. I just feel like this matte especially doesn't look super flattering on me. I don't know what's the deal with that. I would think it would, but I don't really love the undertone on me. And then the shimmers I don't love. I feel like this is really dry, this is really dry and nothing special. It's just a champagne metallic, and this one, there are so many beautiful indie single eyeshadows that have a beautiful shimmery effect, and this just doesn't compare. This just disappoints me. I feel like I'd rather just buy some indie singles and basically spend the same and really have what I want. I mean, these shimmers just don't make it worth it for me. The fact that I don't love this matte, okay, that's kind of like my taste. It's not the quality, it's just the color that I don't like, but in general it's just not my favorite. And I expected to love this, but I think the Mini Glam is a lot better than this one. I just don't think this is very great. I haven't reached for this one since I reviewed it, but it's too new for me to actually get rid of this one, and also too expensive. Probably I'm gonna give it another shot, but I never feel like grabbing for this one. I never feel like using this one, so that tells me enough. Also, now that I'm looking at this particular shade, I think that I have a single from Menagerie Cosmetics that is so similar in tone but is much better in formula. Then the Blueberry Muffin palette by BH Cosmetics. This is one of my favorites in my collection. This is such a great quality. I love the periwinkle tones in here. I think the shimmers are really nice. Some of them have a little bit more texture to them. This shade is quite purple on the eyes. You can go a little bit more neutral. You can go a little bit more blue. You have some options here. I think this shimmer is also really pretty. I really like this palette. Then the Deuce or the Douce by Juvia's Place. This is an eyeshadow palette that I bought because of Nikki tutorials, but then I never used it. And this just doesn't really have the shades that I feel inspired by. I don't really know how to use this. I thought this shimmer was really dry and quite disappointing, this silvery one. I do like the look of this green one, but this is not a shade that I usually really wear. I don't feel like it looks the best with my eye color. And this shade is also a bit more pink than I expected, so it doesn't really translate on the eyes as I would think. I'm a bit torn about this eyeshadow palette. I don't really know what to do with it. Oh, this one looks really pretty though. This iridescent one actually has a really pretty like pinky purple shift. This one is more of an icy pink. I'm tempted to keep it, but I'm always tempted to keep it. I always want to keep this because there's something about it that I like, but then I never grab for it. I just don't feel inspired by this color story. I just don't really see looks here that I can do. I'm gonna put this in the maybe pile for now. I'm gonna see what I think about it later on. By the way, this is definitely more of a collection video than an actual declutter. I don't really like decluttering a lot of things at the same time. All of this I paid with my own money for, and as long as I can still use it, as long as I still like it, as long as I feel like I have room in my life for it, I will probably keep it. I'm not exactly sure if I already said this in this video because I also did a declutter and collection before this one of my blushes and bronzers. But I just want to mention it. Don't expect any crazy declutters. At least for now, that's not what's gonna be my style. It just doesn't make sense for the person I am now, the makeup collection that I have now, and just my goals with my makeup. So this is the Magic Mini by Juvia's Place, and this is just a palette that I don't know how to use. I think it looks quite pretty, but I never really feel like grabbing for this one. I never really feel like using this. When I see these colors, I don't know what kind of look to do. It's just, this is all so warm, then this is also cool. So I would never combine these colors together. Maybe if I would really try, but if I'm just casually doing my makeup, I'm not gonna combine such warm colors with such cool colors. I think the shades are quite pretty, but is it really worth it to keep this? By the way, we have some background music. I'm sorry about that. I hope you don't hear it as much as I can hear it. I don't really feel like I'm ever really gonna be reaching for this eyeshadow palette, although it does have some nice individual shades. I'm just so not inspired by this color story. I think I'm never gonna do looks with this. I wanna be that person, I wanna do it, but I just don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, when I swatch it, I'm like, it's so pretty, but I don't grab for it. I think the color that's tempting me the most to keep it right now is this one. Like the pink with the kind of yellowy gold shift. That's really tempting me. I think this is also gonna be in the maybe pile for now, and I'm just gonna decide at the end. So next up we have the BH Cosmetics Color Festival eyeshadow palette. I mainly bought this for two shades, this one, and that's also mainly the two shades that I ever used in this palette. But aside from that, I don't really grab for this a lot, but I don't really feel like I have like replacements for these or color dupes in my collection that I find close enough to actually get rid of this palette. I kind of feel like I don't need it, but then when I look at those shades, I'm like, I still want shades like that in my life. Those two also just pair together so well. I like the look of these blues, but I just never grab for them, ever. I also think I have these in my Colourpop Blue Moon palette right now, so I don't really need those blues. This looks nice, but not really special, this Queen shade. I think I'm gonna put this in a Maybe pile as well. I just really like the look of that lilac-y shade. I'm just gonna grab the Ethereal Bloom palette and kind of like hold it next to it. Is it similar enough? This one has some more pink in it than this one. This one definitely is a bit more cool toned. And this one, those aren't similar. Then we also have the Ice Cream Dream eyeshadow palette. I feel like we have a dupe. Hello, you see me? I'm not wearing any makeup. I feel like we have a dupe. Black Cherry and Sequin, they look very similar. So then I only want to see if I have a dupe for that pop shade. The quality isn't even really like a problem here. I think these swatches look really nice. It's a really nice quality palette. I just don't feel that inspired by the color story. I think I'm just gonna put it in the Maybe pile and think about it a little bit more and maybe compare it with a few other palettes before I really decide. Next up I have this Death by Chocolate I Heart Makeup eyeshadow palette. This is quite a nice cool toned eyeshadow palette. It has some nice shimmers in here that I actually quite like. It's not like the best quality ever, but I've done some pretty looks with this one. I especially like this shade over here. That's kind of like a taupey gray. It doesn't look very impressive in the swatches, by the way. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not that great. I don't have any room left for swatches. The swatches don't look the best. Should I get rid of this one? I've done some pretty nice looks with it. It's pretty okay, it's pretty nice. I've kind of added a little bit more to this swatch. I think these shimmers look pretty nice. Not like the most interesting shimmers ever, but they look pretty nice. I think I just want to compare it to a few eyeshadow palettes. Let me see. So the Fame eyeshadow palette could be pretty... Just let me figure this out. Oh, okay, so I feel like there are definitely some similar shades here. Not like exact dupes, but similar vibes. And then the Nabla eyeshadow palette, I don't feel like these are really that similar. Because the Nabla one doesn't have any like mauve tones. And the shimmers are also not really similar. I think this is also gonna go in a Maybe pile for now. Today it's just hard for me to right away say that I don't want things anymore. I'm just gonna put it aside. Otherwise I'm gonna be indecisive for way too long. Sometimes I'm just really in the mood to declutter and it's just so easy for me. And sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to get rid of anything, but I know that I kind of have to. So this is the Kaleidos Futurism 7 Sashimi City. This is quite a nice eyeshadow palette. I do like the shimmers more than the mattes. It's not one that I reach for like a lot. I like the Club Nebula a lot more. I just think this packaging is a little bit too much of a fuss. I don't really like how this opens. I don't really like how this like lays on top of your vanity. This isn't my favorite type of packaging. I think it's pretty, but I don't think it's practical. Then I have the Nabla Wildberry Cutie palette. This isn't my favorite palette by Nabla because these didn't turn out to be like my absolute favorite shades. I don't know, I do like them, but they just look a little bit harsh on me. I do think Alchemy 2.0 is a really beautiful color. I just think this shade Incense could have been something else that wouldn't make it much easier to use this palette. Something I could put down first before using one of these darker shades. This is just a little bit harsh and warm for me. These are not colors that I grab for all the time, but individually I do like them. I've grabbed for this one quite a lot, this one quite a lot. It's just not perfect for me and my preferences, but I do really like the quality. I just don't really get this one. I don't don't feel like this does anything for me. And then the Raw Beauty Christie at First Sight eyeshadow palette. This is just such beautiful packaging. I love mushrooms. I think they are so cute, and this came out in the fall, and then I'm even more excited about mushrooms, so I felt like I just want this. This is not an eyeshadow palette that I reach for a lot. There are some pretty mattes in here. I don't love the shimmers. I did some nice looks with it, but I feel like I should give it a bit more of a chance. I feel like I should use it a bit more. But sometimes I just feel like it's a bit too grungy for me. This shade, and this shade I wouldn't really reach for. This shade I wouldn't reach for. These and these I don't really like. This is not really my shade. It's not my perfect color story, to be completely honest with you. And maybe you could argue that maybe I shouldn't have bought it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you could maybe say that, but I'm not gonna throw it away. I do like the quality of the mattes that I use. But yeah, I don't grab for this one a lot. So this is the Colourpop In a Trance eyeshadow palette. This was also from that collection with the more pastel tones. This one I like the least because even with the shimmers, I feel like they feel quite dry and crumbly, and I just don't really love the quality of this palette. I just felt like it was too light and crumbly and powdery. Let's see if I still have room to swatch this. I guess that pinky one is fine, but the other shimmers, like this purpley one, I didn't really like. I don't really feel like I need this in my life. Yeah, I don't really feel like I'm ever gonna be reaching for this one. Even the shades that I thought would work for me, they don't really work for me. Even this darker, a little bit darker purple, I didn't really like. Am I gonna declutter this one? Let me just swatch that darker purple. It just doesn't swatch. It's so dry. Nothing really. Okay, here we have a little bit of pigment, but even in the swatch, you can already tell that it's so dry. I think I'm gonna declutter this. I thought I could still keep it just, you know, to combine it with other eyeshadow palettes, but I don't feel like I need this in my life. I like the other orangey pinky one better because I feel like the quality of that one is just a bit better, but I don't need this one. This one is gonna go. Okay, maybe I should wash my arm real quickly. I'll be right back. Okay, so I washed my arm. Let's move on to the next eyeshadow palette. That is the Flutterby eyeshadow palette by Colourpop. I actually think this is pretty nice quality. It has nice shimmers in here. Let me just compare this one to that I Heart makeup eyeshadow palette. Okay, we have some similar tones in here. It's not exactly the same, but I feel... Why is it so hard to have two palettes like this? I feel like this shade over here, can you kind of see it? I hope you can see it. And the Getaway and the Getaway shade in that Colourpop palette look pretty similar. Let me just quickly swatch them. So this one is from the Colourpop palette. This one is from the I Heart Revolution palette. Okay, those are pretty similar. And I think I like the Colourpop one better. So that is interesting. Then let me just swatch this one over here and just swatch one, I think the Wild Wing in the Colourpop palette. So this is the Colourpop one and this is the I Heart makeup one. Similar vibes, a lot more pigment, a lot more color to it. I guess we kind of found shades that can make me forget about this palette, but I'm not entirely sure yet. But at least I'm gonna keep the Flutterby eyeshadow palette. Then I have the Dreamy 2 eyeshadow palette by Nabla, one of my absolute favorites. It has so many beautiful textures in here, beautiful colors. I love doing looks with this one, especially in the fall and winter. This one in my palette is a little bit of a Dutch shade. I don't really get a lot of it on my eye or on my hand, but that's just the way it is. The rest of the palette I really love. Then we have the Dreamy 1 eyeshadow palette, one of my ultimate favorites in my collection. This one inspires me so much. I think it's so pretty. Let me just swatch this one next to one of the ones in that I Heart makeup palette. Look, it's so pretty. I think that's a really pretty shade. Okay, so I don't think these I Heart makeup ones are really the same, but I guess you could do a look with similar vibes. I'm starting to think more and more that I should declutter that one. But at least I'm gonna be keeping this Dreamy palette because it's just so pretty. I love it. Then we have the Norns eyeshadow palette by Honest Eye. This is just so beautiful. The shimmers in here are next level. They are so good. Definitely keeping this one. This one is newer in my collection. This is just one of the prettiest eyeshadow palettes that I have. I mean, the quality of these shimmers is just something else. Then I have two Smashbox eyeshadow palettes. This one is the one in Punked. This is a cool toned, kind of cool toned neutrally one. Let's just swatch this shade. Okay, so this is also one that could kind of replace that I Heart makeup one. I really like the mattes in this. I also think the mattes in this could give me the same vibe. I think especially if I would kind of combine these two shades together, then I could kind of get a matte that I would want in that look. So these palettes actually don't get the best reviews, but I actually really like them. Well, they aren't like the ultimate best, but I like the mattes and the shimmers are just nice. They're creamy and that's what I like. And I mean, this one is kind of like more textured and more blinding. So if you just add this to a look, you can get it to another level. So I actually really like this, but I don't feel like a lot of people agree with me. Then we have this one in Prism. This one has some more iridescent shades. Not all of these shades are like super iridescent and special. These ones are a bit more toned down and satiny, but these on the top are really nice and shiny. Then I have the Lilac You A Lot eyeshadow palette by Colourpop. This is also one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes in my collection. It's so nice. I love the quality. I think the shimmers are really pretty. Let me just quickly compare this lilac. I don't feel like it's that similar. I'm just gonna swatch this one next to this one. Maybe they are similar enough. Is that a spot on dupe? Is it pretty much the same? I think so. They're really similar. But I feel like I'm kind of gonna forget about it. But they're both like a pinky lilac. I'm not sure. But at least I'm gonna be keeping the Lilac You A Lot because I really like it. Not sure just yet about that color festival. Alright, we're almost done. I almost showed you all my palettes. This is the Colourpop It's My Pleasure. This is a purpley palette that is a little bit more on the warmer side. It's not that purpley and therefore I don't grab for it a lot, but I still like the quality. I feel like I should grab for it a little bit more. It's just these shades. This isn't really purple, right? This isn't really purple. This isn't really purple. This one is more like a nude. It's just kind of like purple leaning. It's a purpley vibe, but it's not really what I'm looking for when I look for purple. It's almost a bit too berry for me. I don't really like get this color story. The shimmers are quite nice. It's just not completely my taste, but it's good enough and I like it enough to keep it. Next up we have the Colourpop Frozen 2 Anna eyeshadow palette. I think this packaging is really cute. I actually really like how this packaging looks. I quite like the color story. It's a little bit warm for me, but you can also get some more neutrally cool looks. So it kind of depends what you go for, but I really like this color story for like fall time. I think for that it's really nice and I like the quality in this. I really like this shimmer. I think it's really pretty. And this one in the crease is also just a really nice kind of mauve-y shade. It's a really interesting type of shade that I don't really feel like I have anywhere else in my collection. Alright, so those were basically all my eyeshadow palettes. I also have two Jeffree Star Cosmetics eyeshadow palettes that I bought before all the drama, and I'm not going to be throwing them away, but I also don't really want to show them on my channel. I don't really want to promote them, but I bought them with my own money, so it's not going to help anything if I throw them away now. I have to say I don't really use them if I can't show them anywhere. But I don't want to throw them away. I just want to keep them. I do quite like the quality. I like the palettes that I have, but it's just not something that I want to promote. I just want to say it. The last time that I did kind of like an eyeshadow palette video, I forgot to mention it, but they are kind of like in a separate part of my collection. So let's go through the eyeshadow palettes and let's decide. So I'm decluttering this one. I think it's also time to declutter this one. I'm never reaching for this one. It's pretty old. I have some nice cool toned eyeshadow palettes and I wouldn't really like recommend this or put this in a video. Then the Color Festival one. I'm just not entirely sure about this one. I feel like I will forget the combination of these shades if I declutter it. Maybe I should... I'm not entirely sure what to do with this one. I feel like I have the shades, but I kind of want them together. I kind of want to have them together. And there are some pretty nice shimmers in here as well. It's just this shade. It's so nice. Which of the two was it again? Was it the lighter one? Okay, I think I'm gonna declutter this one, but I'm not gonna throw it away right away. And then if I maybe miss it and feel like doing a look with it, I will. But if I don't miss it, then I'm just fully gonna declutter it. So it's kind of like halfway out of my collection, not entirely on the chopping block. I'm just gonna see if I think about it, which I don't think I will. I just don't like throwing things out really fast. Sometimes your opinion changes about something. Of course, you shouldn't use that as an excuse to hold on to things way too long, but yeah, I think it's time to let go. Why is this so hard? Why is it always so hard to let go? Okay, so I think I'm also gonna be decluttering this one. I don't think I'm gonna be reaching for it. It just doesn't inspire me. I have these shades and the shimmers in here aren't that special that I feel like I have to keep it. Maybe if those textures were a little bit more special, that I would feel more like I'd have to keep it. But when I look at this, I'm just like, no, this doesn't make sense to me. So I'm gonna declutter this one. Then lastly, we have the Dews by Juvia's. I feel like I want to give this one more shot. I feel like I should maybe do 1 or 2 looks with this. If I don't, then it's gonna be... Probably I'm not gonna do that, but I just feel like there is something about this palette that makes me not want to let go. Alright, I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna do a look with it. If I don't, I'm gonna throw it away. But I just feel like it deserves one more chance. That's just like a gut feeling. It doesn't really make any sense. That's just what we're gonna do. So that means I'm decluttering 4 eyeshadow palettes. I had 38, now I have 34 left. These are the ones I'm actually decluttering. And that's gonna be it for my eyeshadow palette video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I feel like it was kind of a chaotic video, but there are a lot of palettes here. Like this video if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe, and then I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!